Shabbat Shalom, everybody. In 1968, the end of 1968, going into 1969, this day was celebrated by 3 astronauts who were orbiting the moon for the first time, the astronauts of Apollo 8, Jim Lovell and also Frank Borman and Bill Anders. And in thinking about their journey for the first time out of the Earth's gravitational pull, Jim Lovell remarked that he could hide the entire Earth with his thumb in the window. That everything that he had ever known about his life, everything that he had ever experienced, all that there was to human existence could be hidden by his thumb. And he said the vast loneliness up here at the moon is awe-inspiring. And it makes you realize what you have back there on Earth. The Earth from here is a grand oasis in the big vastness of space. I think about that Christmas trip that the astronauts took to the moon all of those years ago and the lessons that we continue to learn on what it means to think about that oasis in the grand blackness of space. From above the Earth, you do not see any of the divisions, you don't see any of the political boundaries, you don't see right and left, you don't see red and blue, you don't see Christian or Jew or Muslim or Hindu or any of the varieties of ways that we experience the divine here on planet Earth. We don't note from that distance the difference in the hue of the skin of any of the creatures that wander this planet. We don't see any of the divisions that cause us so much angst and so much pain. I remember when I was growing up, there was a friend of ours who had parents and they just couldn't get along. And she was getting married, and just before the wedding, they were having an argument on the phone. And her fiance said, "Why don't you just tell them to bleepity, 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 bleep?" And her parents heard it. And they said, "We will not come to the wedding unless he apologizes." And he said, "I'm not gonna apologize. A, I can say whatever I want in my own home, and B, kind of meant it." And they said, "Well, if he won't apologize, then how can we attend that wedding?" And because they were each so consumed in being right, they didn't attend that wedding. They never got to know their grandchildren. Her children never got to know their grandparents. There was always this fracture that remains to this day, decades later. What we learn, I think, in this season is the importance of the question of not what is right, which is sometimes so hard to determine, but a better question, which is, what is loving? Who do we need to be, not just for ourselves, but for each other? And are there ways in which we can elevate that value of shalom, of peace, to the highest place in our consciousness. And there is so much that we elevate, that we value, a sense of justice and right and truth. And all of these things are important to pursue as Torah teaches. But shalom, that blessing of peace, is paramount to all. We are asked to be rodfei shalom, pursuers of peace. And in order to do that, our tradition teaches that we constantly need to be engaged in a process of teshuva. We constantly need to be engaged in a process of returning to the best expression of our most authentic selves. I was learning recently that teshuva, which we often think of as repentance, is actually return. And when you think about it, just take a moment wherever you are, and I know we're all in different places, and maybe we're still finishing the dishes or we're not quite settled to celebrate. So just take a moment and stop and exhale. And now breathe in. It's when we return that breath to us that life really begins again. With every rhythm of breath, with every return of a nishima, of a breath, we are returning life to ourselves. We are returning to our most authentic selves. We are returning to who it is that we really ought to be, open and present, aware and loving. And so as we embrace the gift of this Shabbat, let's open our hearts to the extraordinary majesty of the world in which we live, that grand oasis in the blackness of space that links us so much more of what we have in common than what drives us apart, and find a commitment again to return to ourselves, to return to each other, to return to peace. Shabbat Shalom, a Sabbath of peace to everyone. And it's now my privilege to invite Carmel and Lou Naaman, who will lead us in the kindling of the Shabbat candles and in the celebration of Kiddush.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. The heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing. And God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvosav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kadisho v'yahava v'ratzon hinchilanu, zicharon l'maaseh v'reishis, ki hu yom tehila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tzion mitzrayim, ki bamnu v'acharta, Yosanu kidashta mikol hamim, v'shabas kadshcha v'yahava uvratzon inchaltonu, Baruch atah Adonai HaKadosh HaShabbos. Amen.
L'chaim.
Chaim.
In the 17th century, the Lurianic Kabbalists believed that when you came home for Shabbat, you were accompanied by two angels that would escort you all the way home. And when they would come to greet you, you would say, Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet. Welcome, peace be to you, those ministering angels who have come to accompany me and join God's world to our world for Shabbat. And so together, let us sing at home. It's worth it. Try it. No one will judge you, I promise, as we welcome Shabbat.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu L'Shalom, Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzitchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you are able, please rise for the Baruch Hu. Yadalai, yadadadadadai, yadadai, yadadadadadai, Baruch Hu et Adonai, HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam, 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 Le'olam va'ed,
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtsono, bore yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
Umavir yom umavir laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv aravim. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, Amecha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta, al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shofbenu uv'kumenu, nasiach b'chukecha, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. Please be seated. Love, only love with all your heart. Love, only love with all your soul. Listen to the wisdom inside and around you. You will remember as you're walking through the day. Make this world a better place. Children will learn, and their future will be love. Love, only love with all your heart. Love, only love with all your soul. Listen to the wisdom inside and around you. You will remember in your home and on your way. Make your life voice of God. Be a sculptor for the holy. Be a doorway for love. Love, only love with all your heart. Love, only love with all your soul. Listen to the wisdom inside and around you. You will remember. You will remember. You will remember.
In the Talmud, there's a story about the sage Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, Rabbi Elazar. And the two of them got in trouble with the Romans. And so they had to go hide in a cave. And they hid in this cave, the Talmud tells us, for 12 years. And all they did during this time together was to sit and study Torah. And after the emperor had died and the decree against them was annulled, somebody went and told them that they could emerge from their cave. And they came out of the cave and they saw people going about their normal daily business, plowing their fields, sowing their fields. And Rabbi Shimon says, why are they spending all their time with all of this everyday stuff when there's so many holy things they're supposed to be devoted to? And the Talmud says that every place they looked, their eyes caused it to burn. And then God called out to them and said, did you come out of your cave to destroy my world? Go back to your cave. And it says that they spent another year in the cave, 12 more months to think about it. And then when they came out of the cave, Rabbi Elazar was able to not let go of his anger and his resentment, but his father, Rabbi Shimon, healed anything that he broke. And so it was that one time it was the eve of Shabbat, and they saw a man who was rushing home holding 2 different bunches of myrtle. And they said to him, why do you need these? And he says, it's to honor Shabbat. And they said, well, don't you need just one? Why do you have 2? Are you being greedy? And he says, no, it's just to remind myself of the mitzvah that I have to remember Shabbat and I have to keep Shabbat. Just like the 2 candles that we light for Shabbat remind us of the twin commandment to observe and remember. And so when they saw how committed this man was and all of Israel, even though they had to lead their daily lives, they were able to be set at ease. And so the Talmud asks us to think about our resentments, to think about our judgments, to think about how quick we are to look at how somebody else prioritizes their values, how quick we are to cast judgment on how other people pursue their lives. When in fact, sometimes all we really need to do is to stop and listen hard to what it is that someone else is trying to say about the choices that they make. Because sometimes it happens that if we can let go of our pious righteousness, our own sense of being a bit holier than thou, then we can be liberated from that judgment that keeps us locked in our own sense of self and out into a wilderness where we expand our consciousness to be more aware of how God sees things than how we do. Continue singing that song of liberation, Mi Chamocha, who is like you, Adonai, who can see the world for what it truly is.
Join with Mi Chamocha, Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha netar ba'kodesh, Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha netar ba'kodesh. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו Haporesukat shalom, Ahalenu ve'al amo Israel, ve'ol Yerushalayim. Amen.
We take time now to ground ourselves, to open our hearts, to release our cares and our concerns and embrace the peace of Shabbat, not simply with our eyes and our bodies, but with that inner sense of our spirits, to try to allow a sense of unification between our outer selves and our inner selves, between the outer world and our inner world. We continue by welcoming the gift of Shabbat.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי
וביום השביעי
שבת וינפש,
Shabbat vayinafash. Good, right?
שבת וינפש. You give him an inch and he takes a mile. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Abraham Joshua Heschel said that to worship is a way of seeing the world in the light of God. Prayer, he wrote, is to regain a sense that the mystery that animates all beings, the divine margent in all attainments. Prayer is our humble answer to the inconceivable surprise of living. Prayer, he says, clarifies our hopes and intentions. It helps us discover our true aspirations, the pangs we ignore, the longings we forget. Prayer teaches us what to aspire to. But the focus of prayer, he writes, is not the self. It is the momentary disregard of our personal concerns, the absence of self-centered thoughts, which constitute the art of prayer. So in asking God for bread, there is one instant, at least, in which our mind is directed neither to our hunger nor to food, but to God's mercy. This instant, he says, is prayer. And so let us take a moment to just try to attune ourselves to the way in which God sees us, how God sees the entirety all together as opposed to all the individual complicated parts. Open ourselves up to that sense of wholeness and that sense of awareness. Return our gaze not from ourselves, but to that which is out in the world. And let us together embrace the real gift of tefillah. If you're able, please rise.
Adonai, sefotay tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula Livnei Fneihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol, Atah Rav Le'Hoshia. Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Ve'Rofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Melech, Melech Meimit Umechayeh, Umatmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalalucha sela. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
If you're standing, you may be seated. There is an idea in Kabbalistic imagery of what's called the Shefa, which is that constant flow of divine energy, almost like what they call a river of light. Rabbi Mike Comans, who teaches on prayer, talks about that river, and he talks about what it's like to stand in that river. He says, the river is always rushing toward me. Divinity is always coming my way, and how I stand in it influences the flow. So my experience of the river has a lot to do with my own willpower, my decisions and actions. I can swim upstream or float along. What I can't control, he writes, is the flow and course of the river. Sometimes the waters are still and I'm so busy watching television or cooking a meal, I can forget that I'm in it at all. Other times, he writes, I go over a waterfall and I can't help but be aware of the river. So when we inhabit this river of light, it makes us conscious of the fact that we are always standing in this flow. It moves us along our spiritual path, and hopefully we are receptive to how it moves us. Sometimes where we thought we were going, sometimes to tributaries we never imagined we would explore. But if we open ourselves up to what that flow of energy can bring us, it can help us to see how God's presence is constantly a part of our life and our experience. That sense of peace that comes from the realization that God is in all things, even in the things that we think are devoid of God's presence, even in the things that rankle our consciousness, the things that get under our skin, the things that offend our sensibilities, God is in that too. And if we can come to see that sense of God in everything and in every moment, perhaps we will be able to understand that these eyes are very limited in how they can see the world. This heart limited in how much understanding it can possess. this mind so limited in what it is able to comprehend, and to open ourselves up with plain humility to help God lead us to peace, to unity, to understanding, and to a sense of tranquility. We pause for moments of silent prayer and meditation.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime, so let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I've learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart, and now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better, and because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Lori, for that song that always makes me well up whenever it's sung by someone with such a pure and focused spirit. In the Torah portion that we read this week, Parshat Vayigash, we read of an extraordinary moment of forgiveness, of reunion, of a sense of a healing across a divide. The last few weeks, we've been reading the story of Joseph. And as we know, Joseph and his brothers are so completely divided from each other that, as it says a couple of weeks ago, They couldn't even say shalom to each other. Joseph is his father's pet, and he uses that position of power not simply to lord himself over his brothers, but also to reveal to them his dreams of his sense of how he will one day be the most important leader to them and to others. A leader where literally the sun and the moon will bow down to him. The brothers can't abide his dreams. They want to thwart his dreams, and so they threaten to kill him and then say, no, better yet, let's sell him. And so Joseph is taken by Ishmaelite slave traders to Egypt, where he becomes a slave to Potiphar, and because of his refusal to back down from his convictions and his morals, ends up in the prison when Potiphar's wife accuses him of assaulting her. And then because of his facility with dreams, he is elevated to be second in command of all of Egypt, responsible for this nationalization project that will protect them through the years of famine that will come. And in those years when nothing will grow and famine has stricken not only the Egyptians, but all of the peoples in the land surrounding Egypt, Joseph's brothers return to ask for food, but they don't know they're speaking to their brother. And so he messes with them a bit until this week's Torah portion, when he realizes they have changed, when he realizes they are no longer who they once were, that they themselves have had a transformation. And so Joseph orders everyone to leave him so that he could reveal himself to his brothers. So overcome with emotion was he at this prospect of reunion that he literally dissolves into tears. And he says to them these immortal words. And he says to them, Ani Yosef, ha'od avi chai? I'm Joseph. How's Dad? His brothers couldn't answer him. They were so dumbfounded on this revelation. It literally says their faces fell. And Joseph says, come forward to me. And he says, I am your brother Joseph, you know, the one that you sold into Egypt. But he says, don't be distressed. Don't flagellate yourselves because you sold me here. There was a bigger plan. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. In Genesis chapter 45, verse 6, he says, it's now 2 years that there has been famine in the land. There are still 5 more years to come. And God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival on earth and to save your lives in an extraordinary deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but it was God. And God has made me a father to Pharaoh, Lord of his whole household, a ruler over all the land of Egypt. And so he and his brothers embrace, and they weep. Has all been forgotten? Has all been forgiven? No, of course not. But they realize that they need each other. They realize they are still brothers, even if their paths in life have so violently diverged, that their fates are woven up with each other, and that bond that connects them is not severed, and it's not broken. So often we become so enmeshed in our own sense of our own selves that we separate ourselves from those who take divergent paths, those whose dreams don't square with our own. How many of us have a sibling or a family member we don't talk to, or a family member from whom we've become estranged, or someone we make our annual phone call to? We'll go to the simchas, but let's face it, we're not really invested in that one's life, and frankly, they're not invested in ours. So upset are we with the choices they've made, with the anger they've inspired, with the resentment that they've caused, that we've decided, you do you, I'll do me, and we cause that barrier to be imposed. But what Joseph teaches us in this week's Torah portion is that even in the greatest of separations, there can be room for forgiveness. Because as we've been exploring throughout this service, there is a truth that the Kabbalists teach, that there is nowhere and nothing in which God's presence cannot be found or discovered. It's not like God lives in me, but doesn't live in my enemy. that doesn't inhabit her thoughts or his feelings. That person whose values I don't get, whose choices I don't understand, and whose very being curdles my experience. God can't be in that. God can only be in me. God doesn't want your dreams. God only wants mine. And what Joseph helps us to realize is that the brother's dreams and his dreams don't matter. It's what God's dreams are, those unifying dreams, those dreams that tell us that we need to remove ourselves from the place of judgment and self-righteous and selfish care and concern to a place of compassion and openness and humility. Because if we can do that, we can find that we can step across different divides, that we can step beyond the boundaries of our own selves to discover truths we never knew, to embrace dreams we never imagined would be ours, to become people only God could have imagined we could be. But what would happen to us if we could realize that sense of unity? We live in a world that is so divergent. There's so many fractures, where there's so much separation, so much discord, so much resentment, so much judgment. But what if we could remove ourselves from that place and join Jim Lovell aboard Apollo 8 and look at the earth from afar, that oasis in that sea of blackness? What if we could realize that just for an instant in time, us little specks of carbon have this extraordinary world that we get to share? And what would happen if we decided to let go of our self-certitude and open our hearts? What do you think? Why do you see the world the way you do? What do you have to teach me that I don't already know and understand? What Joseph teaches is that he knows who he is. He knows what he's become, but he makes room in his heart for his brothers, and they in turn make room in their hearts for him. And if Joseph and his brothers can find their way to reconcile, then certainly we can find our way to as well. That sense of wholeness that we seek to find between each other is also a sense of wholeness and healing we seek to find within ourselves. And so we ask for that blessing of healing, not simply for ourselves, but for those who are themselves too vulnerable to be able to find it themselves. And so on this Shabbat, we ask, Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzhak Yaakov Imotenu Sarah Rivka Leah Rachel. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Becca, Rachel, and Leah, send your blessings of healing to those in our families, those in our community, and around the world who are in need of your special blessings of healing on this Shabbat. We add on our prayers tonight Samuel Agranal, Perry Bear, Fred Belkin, Barbara Bernardi, Margie Berman Block, Kathleen Bowersox, Lawrence Bullman, Sharon Dakota, Lynn Edinger, Norman Eidenberg, Arnold Erne, Estelle Erne, Eileen Feinerman, Peter Feldman, Ronna Finlay, Marty Fromowitz, Bob Geller, Nate Goldberg, Jack Goldstein, Rona Guberman, Hannah Hoffman, Keith Homer, Olivia Jones, Michelle Cahan, Sammy Kalmowitz, Marcus Kaplan, Deanna Katz, Norman Kaufman, Florence Koish, Judy Kornitsky, Mickey Cutler, Jessel Martins, Gerald Miel, Shirley Ann Myers, Victoria Nelson, Lisa Nyron, Alan Ognowski, Dan Perez, Maurice Plow, Ronald Rohan, Ellen Romberg, Cynthia Romero, Melissa Rose, Eileen Rosenbaum, Alan Rosenfeld, Sharon Rubin, Ruth Moria, Shoshana Miriam, Bonnie Schaefer, Mark Schaum, Bernice Shore, Len Sirowitz, Mickey Sirowitz, Lawrence Spitz, Michael Sprinzen, Gary Stromberg, Martin Cernhammer, Mitchell Wachtel, Audrey Weinberg, Ellie Weiss, Jeff Wissut, Israel Yamuter, Linda Yanknow, and Joel Ziegler. We add also those whom you include in our prayers as we pray for a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, healing of body and spirit, along with all those who may be ill. May healing come speedily, and let us all say together, Amen.
Mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal able, please rise for the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגר עלינו כמו המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר בחיי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn now to those whom we have lost, those whose lives have left us a legacy of love and understanding, of wisdom and goodness, whose memories we cherish each and every day, and whose spirits are woven into the fabric of our family and our lives. On this Shabbat, we remember on their yard sites Alice Abramson, Claire Edelman, Janet Edelman, Paul Barrow, Estelle Wexler Bearden, Ruth Biko, Norton Bennis, Mildred Bennis, Donald Berger, Mildred Berngard, Robert Blaszek, Stephen Bowen, Rebecca Braunstein, Mildred Burns, Bessie Cohen, Jeanette Cohen, Stella Cole, Ben Diamond, Nathan Eder, Mildred Eisenberg, Joe Fannin, Oscar Faust, Bruce Frankel, Jessica Frankel, Robert Jessoff, Shirley Globerman, Natalie Goldbaum, Esther Gorelick, Mayor Gottlieb, Adele Gottlieb, Rose Greenspan, Charles Grossberg, Sally Gross, Larry L. Jacobs, Jill Capel, Miriam Kaplan, Michael Kent, Alan Kravitz, Miriam Krieg, Eleanor Kurtz, Isidore Lassen, Molly Leader, Philip Leaf, Ann Levine, Rhoda Longert, Isidore Marks, Leon Mayerchek, George Melman, Camille Merson, Stephen L. Michelle, Sadie Merman, Wendy Moskov, Marley Oatley, Morton Pickman, Pauline F. Pollock, Betty Ratner, Eli Robinson, Sarah Rose, Morton Rosenfeld, Sylvia Rosenstein, Lawrence Rubenstein, Mitchell Saed, Herman Shear, Regine Schmier, Abraham Schwam, Sidney Scharf, Joshua Smallwood, Betty Swartz, Edward Teltzler, Juliet Teeger, George Weinberg, Francis Weiss, Isaac Weiss, Randolph White, and Mary Wolfe. And we add with sorrowing hearts those who relate to rest in recent days, whose memories we cherish in the 30 days of Shaloshim: Samuel Gitlin, Jetta Gudima DeLove, Jerry Tamarkin, Alvin Dern, Ed Hames, J. Michael Graff, Sally Belson, Jacobs Wexler, Rennie Steinberg, Jerry Rahm, and Shirley Rahm. We remember also those whom you love, whom you treasure in your own hearts, as together we rise and offer our thanks to the gift of life with the words of Kaddish. Together we say, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayeh d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'ameh amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekutsha brichu. Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav v'ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the one who gives peace in the high heavens grant peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who mourn here and everywhere. And we say, Amen. We will conclude our service singing the words of Ein Kelohenu.
Shout out to Steve Dropkin, the composer of this fun and joyful Ein Kelohenu. Please join in at home. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kemalkenu. kadonenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu. Mi Elohenu, mi kadonenu, mi kemakenu, mi kemoshienu, en Elohenu, en kadonenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu, en Elohenu, en kadonenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu. No te la lohenu, no te la donenu, no te la makenu, no te la moshienu, en kelohenu, en kemakenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu, en kelohenu, en kadonenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu. Be glad you're not playing the piano out there. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, En Eloheinu, En Kadonenu, En Kemakenu, En Kemoshienu, En Eloheinu, En Kadonenu, En Kemakenu, En Kemoshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Come on, Rabbi, sing with me. You ready? En Kelohenu, En Kadonenu, En Kemalkeinu, En Kemoshienu, En Kelohenu, En Kadonenu, En Kemalkeinu, En Kemoshienu. Shabbat Shalom.
What makes it easier for Steve Dropkin is he's a guitar player. He doesn't have to worry about the keyboard, Lori. Wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. We're so glad that you enjoyed us for services tonight. Special thank you to Carmel and Lou Naiman, who led us so beautifully in Candles and Kiddush. We want to spend our love to Miriam and Jack Boschus, who are celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary and milestone birthday to Jack. So we want to wish them both good health and a very, very happy, can you imagine 65 years? Wow, what a wonderful, wonderful milestone. Tomorrow morning, please join Rabbi Weissman for Torah study at 9:30 in the morning. And Temple Bethel, as you will learn over the coming weeks, is pleased to launch Bethel Circles, our small group initiative where you can find and connect with other members with shared interests and hobbies and passions. Go on the Temple's website, www.tbeboca.org, and you can learn all about the different circles that you can join. Connect with other members safely from your own home through Zoom and the different ways that we'll connect. And obviously over time, God willing, we will be able to come together in person to share in our love and our passions. So we hope that you will find this new pathway to connect with other members at Temple Bethel. We want to thank all those who generously supported the Giving Tree, who supported the holiday gifts for local children and families in need. We want to wish everyone who is celebrating Christmas a very Merry Christmas. And to all of those who will be now celebrating their last Shabbat of 2020, we wish you a very happy New Year. Look forward to you joining us next week on January the 1st for our first Shabbat of 2021. And we hope that you will be with us at 7:30. And I want you to mark your calendars also for the week of Thursday, January 21st to Sunday, January 24th for our annual Interfaith Weekend with St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church. Most of the programming will be virtual, and we are pleased to have as our virtual scholar in residence, Rabbi Dr. Joshua Garraway from the Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles. Dr. Garraway is one of the most inspiring and authentic, fun teachers who helps us to understand the intersections of early rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. On Thursday evening, he's going to be giving us a window into Paul and how Paul's Jewish life influenced the development not only of Judaism, but of Catholicism. And then on Friday night, he will be speaking during our Shabbat service on what we as Jews have to learn from our Catholic brothers and sisters. And then on Sunday, he will be speaking as part of Mass at St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church, the 12:15 Mass, on what Catholics have to learn from us as Jews. It should be a fantastic weekend. We have a wonderful scholar in residence. More programming that you can enjoy can be found on the temple's website. And lastly, if you are in need or know someone in need, if you are insecure in terms of your shelter or food or any other needs, we know this is a very, very difficult time for many people, and we don't want anyone to be insecure. Please call Temple Bethel 561-391-8900, and we will get back to you and we will help you. And now we hope that you will join us for a bit of motzi. Ha-motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Ha-motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom.